All right, happy Friday. We're going to be talking about MLS statistics. We're going to dive deep into MLS, what us realtors, brokers look at. And I highly recommend that when you are talking to your realtors, and by the way, it doesn't matter where you are, doesn't matter what location, doesn't matter if you are in Michigan, California, Hawaii, New York, Connecticut, doesn't matter what state, you should be asking your realtors for statistics, information. What are they going to back up their opinions with? In other words, oftentimes I hear this from different people around the country. They're wanting to know how's the market, which way is it going, or is it a better time to sell? Is it a better time to buy? Should I buy? For instance, in our area, should I buy near Sumter Landing? Should I buy near Spanish Springs or Brownwood? Or what's a better area in the villages? All those kind of things are very typical questions. And if you're going to get those kind of questions or have those kind of questions, you want really good answers. So number one, I'm going to educate you today on some of the things to look for, because a lot of times you don't know what to ask. So we're going to look at that and make sure you're asking these questions of your realtors. And of course, if you have questions about what's going on in Florida, specifically Marion County, Lake County, Sumter County, the Villages, Ocala, just let me know. You could text me at 352-572-3796. You could visit our site if you're curious about anything that's going on in the marketplace as far as what's available. I'm going to show you a little bit of that today and some of the historic things that have happened over the last several months, last several years. And I'm going to give you a little bit of insight as to where things are heading as well. So a little bit of softening in the marketplace for sure. So let's take a look at all of this. I'm going to do a share screen with you. We're going to look at some things here that I think are going to be really, really helpful for you, right? This is our MLS system here. So we'll close out of that. I want to show you this here. So we're going to look at, first thing we're going to look at is we're going to look at, information on the last 10 years. And we're going to look at volume, sales volume. I was really intrigued with this. I guess I've been kind of in love with this particular chart here and blow it up. Hopefully it's big enough. This particular chart here, because let's do full screen. There we go. What I like about it is that it really addresses where we've been. So if you look at this particular area here, 2011, beginning of 2011, on a monthly basis, this is the volume in the marketplace. This is the villages. This is MLS statistics, realtors versus what Property of the Villages would have. And by the way, we'll talk about what the villages, Property of the Villages versus realtors, what the differences are, and what the differences are in the market. It's almost like differing markets, but then yet the same. And I'll clarify in a minute. So January 2011, this is what we saw, volume 20 million for the marketplace, not for the whole year, but that particular month. That's basically the bar right here. And of course, back in 2016, we started having 20 million plus months, meaning that's the kind of volume and the amount of sales that occurred in those particular months that broke through the $20 million ceiling in that particular month, probably the middle, looks like the middle, maybe June, July of 2015. And then obviously 40 million was reached in the middle of 2017. And then 60 million was breached for the first time in, looks like 2020, right? Middle of 2020, coming out of COVID. So over the years, this is a 10-year look, right? Like we've seen this kind of increase in volume. And now January of 2021 just absolutely went crazy, bananas, past 80 million, all the way to 95 million in volume. And this was in June of this year. And then now we've seen this drop off. So look, if you look at this, like there's, we've seen periods and times, 2019 was a big drop off. And that's actually when interest rates were raised. So big drop off here, but big drop off still doesn't compare to the drop off that we saw, during COVID for volume, right? The big drop off, and then this massive increase here back in the early part of this year, a little bit of a dip, and then once again it went up, and then this massive, dip here. It's probably these two dips here or increases. Actually, they mirror each other. This period and that period, and now we're seeing still it's going down a little bit more. I think it's going to mirror what we saw back in early part of or middle part of 2020. Not quite the big dip that we saw during COVID time, but it seems like we're actually now moving into the realm. This whole year 2021, which is what all this is, was the outlier, and it looks like we're now going to fall into this realm somewhere between the upper 30s to 60 million. I think is going to be the new norm. That's what we're going to see here, just like the last couple of years we're here. So hopefully that's helpful, right? That's something that that is definitely different as far as volume. So big differences. I think that gives you a good idea of where the volume has been, what has happened over the years. And I think it also tells you where it went recently and where I think it's going in the near future. So now let's look at a couple other things I want to show you. We're going to look at this. So I'm going to look at the listing inventory. So I think listing inventory is also one of those things, historic look, so you can get a good idea as to where we've been, what's happening most recently, because we've seen a little bit of an increase and a little bit of a climb. So we're actually in the upper 80s now. We've seen, it's kind of gone up and down. We saw a little bit for a day. It was actually like 93, but I think some of the pending properties and the closed properties on MLS, it just hadn't caught up yet. So I think that's, something that we've got to take into account. Okay, so we're now looking at this particular chart here that I think is it's actually really interesting chart here to really look at the listing inventory, and want to make sure that you are seeing that for sure. It looks like we are. So when we're looking at this, we're seeing past 10 years, number of new listings that have hit the marketplace. So we've seen a steady climb, some down, up, down, up, down, up, down. But you see the trend line going up. And of course, this massive decrease in inventory. But now you're seeing at the very tail end of this particular chart, a little bit of a climb up, in inventory. So we're still relatively low in inventory right now. It's saying number of listings October 21. I think this is a little bit off, 158, because we're not seeing that many. That's actually, I'm sorry, what this represents is not the current inventory, but the amount of new listings that have come on the market, right? We've seen now 162. The amount of listings that have come on the market, not the current inventory amount. So hopefully that makes sense. The amount of listings that have come on the market, we've seen a lot of listings come on the market. You look at the last 3 years compared to, this 150 mark, we broke, past 200. A lot of people were actually taking advantage of the marketplace just to make sure that, they can take advantage of the appreciation factor. And now, obviously a little bit of tempering there for sure. Look at some interesting things that we're looking at right now. Something I think that let's take a look at expired listings. So obviously, we're looking at slower markets. You're going to see this spike. You're going to see more properties not sell. This is what this indicator is. All the properties that are not selling. That's what this indicates here. So, you're looking at properties here, less expired listings. That means more properties are selling. Then a little bit of a slowing period, the 2016 period, and then obviously middle of last year, a little bit of a peak because of COVID for obvious reasons. And right after that, tail end of 2020, look at that, just complete drop off. So really, I think what we're seeing is in that drop off of in number of properties that are not selling or expired listings is what that indicates. So that tells you a lot in as far as the properties that are not selling. It tells you the properties are selling at a pretty good rate. I'm going to tell you that it pretty much advocates what we've been thinking, which is a softening in the marketplace, but a softening like a soft landing, almost like a feather, not a crash, reverting back to 2018-19 days. Average sales prices have gone up. Actually, I want to show you that. Let me give you a little bit of insight into that. Show you what's available on the market right now to the minute. So bear with me while I pull that up. We've seen a little bit more inventory come on the market, which I think is an opportunity for buyers to actually get in the marketplace with a little bit less competition. Doesn't mean it's going to be super easy. Doesn't mean that you can steal a property. But it does mean that you might have a little bit better opportunity. So 87 properties is what I'm seeing right now. 87 properties have hit the market at this current time. So I'll share that with you right here. So look, 87 properties. And we're seeing, let's see, there's only 8 properties are under 200,000. Only 8 properties. So most of these properties are here. For those that are looking, this is mostly in the historic section, manufactured homes, so mobile homes in the older section on the east side of 441. And then, obviously some of the older homes will be here. As you can see, this is year built. You'll see some of the patio villas, 1156. That's these are patio villa type homes. And some larger units you'll find in the 280 range, and then things go up from there. Okay, that gives you an idea of what's available there. Let's also look at some of the higher levels. I always get concerned with the lower levels of the marketplace, and that's why I like to show you that. But let's also look at some of the higher levels, and let's look at in the 300 range. Something that we're seeing is also a little bit of a push, kind of push up in all price ranges. But one thing I know for sure, and what I'm really advocating if you're thinking about buying right now, is I think there's some opportunity to buy, right now, especially now during the holiday season, because a lot of people may not be thinking about buying now. They may wait until January, February, March. I think also with the inventory being low, it's kind of a unique dynamic where it's a great time to buy and it's a great time to sell if you're interested in buying or selling. It's really hard, really hard to time the marketplace. I think now is a decent time to buy. A year and a half ago was a better time to buy. We don't know what next year is going to hold. So that's the trick. Recently we've had a couple of sellers ask me, is this a great time to sell, or can I wait until the spring? And I think it's all predicated on their lifestyle. So looking at this, right, under 400,000, we got a handful of homes. I think there's a decent amount of inventory in this 300 to 400 range. I think there's some to choose from. So we're not seeing a ton, but we are seeing some. And the amount of homes that are coming back on the marketplace, or not back on the marketplace, that are coming into the market is pretty decent, as I just showed you before. It's not, and we're not over 200 homes that are coming on the market in any given month. We're seeing about more the 150 to 180 range, which means that there's properties that are coming on the market, but they're also selling relatively fast. Now, one thing I do want to point out, if you look at this tells you days on market. You start looking at days on market, and the days on market is relatively low with a few exceptions. There might be 6 or 7 properties that are exceeding the 30-day period. This one, 36 days, 100 days, 170 days, that type of thing. Most of our properties, I hate to say it, versus some of the competition, they're only on the market for a few days. We price it correctly. We're not giving away properties, but we're pricing it correctly. We're advising our sellers to maybe push the envelope in certain cases. But what we are noticing is we don't want to be so overpriced that we don't sell. And then when a buyer looks at it, they think, oh my gosh, it's been on the market forever. And I don't think that it's, there must be something wrong with the property. It's interesting when I'm looking at that. I don't know if you had that same thought. I'm looking at some of the properties that have been on the market for 30, 40, 100 days. Like, what's wrong with it? Like, how does a property, stay on the market for 100 days and not sell? What's wrong with it? Sometimes there is something wrong, and most of the time there's nothing wrong. It's just the seller or the listing agent just priced it too high, and then the buyers knew it wasn't worth that versus the competition. So they might have looked at it, but they just turned the page on it, so to speak, and didn't buy and didn't put in an offer. So, or maybe there was an inspection issue, or maybe the buyer said, they had buyer's remorse and they decided not to buy and they backed out, and now it's back on the market. There's a lot of mitigating factors behind that. But I think the big point here is make sure that I want to educate you. The big thing about this channel is I want to make sure that you are educated on, what to look for when you talk about statistics. Make sure you understand the marketplace. Make sure your realtor understands the marketplace. Make sure that your realtor is doing a great job in explaining why you should make an offer on a particular property, why you should be aggressive. Tell me more about why. Are there going to be more properties that are going to come on the marketplace? Can I wait, or would it be foolish for me to wait as a buyer or a seller? Have them be really detailed in their explanations is my point. So that's what we're seeing. The couple of other points I want to make before we adjourn, about three or four more points. One, noticing I've had a couple of conversations with realtors recently, and we were talking about, pushing the envelope on listings. And based on the chart, and by the way, if you're just joining in or if you're jumping in the middle of this in some form or fashion, go back to the beginning and really watch the charts that I displayed. And based on those charts, it looks like two things. One, there was a lot of appreciation that took place this year. It doesn't look like the sellers are going to give back the gains. In other words, it doesn't look like we're going to lose the profit or perceived profit or built-in equity. Doesn't look like that's going to happen. But it doesn't look like there's going to be any more great gains. There might be a little bit of a gain appreciation between now and next year, maybe a small appreciation factor in most cases. So I think what that means is that sellers, I believe you're going to be okay for a little bit, take advantage of the low inventory. Buyers, it looks like we've seen the appreciation that we're going to see for the most part. I don't anticipate another jump up where it's like going from here to here to here. It's probably gone from here to here and maybe a little bit more. So if you wanted to wait as a buyer, or if you're coming in the spring, or if you're coming during season, many of you are, and it's starting to get a little bit nippy up north, I think you're going to be okay. I feel pretty good about your buying chances over the next 6 months. Sellers, I feel the same. So I think it's pretty equal, right? But let me know if you have questions, or leave some comments. I'd be curious to see what you think and what you're seeing in your marketplace. I'm going to start giving everybody a comparison as to what I'm seeing with some of my coaching clients around the country and what they're seeing. We're going to do a comparison, villages versus, some other market, California and maybe South Florida and some other areas. But the last thing I want to approach and really address with you is, I've done this before, but I want you to know that there is a difference between Villages agents and MLS realtors. I'm actually looking at this here. I'm going to show you something. MLS agents, MLS realtors, right? We are realtors, belong to the National Association of Realtors. We have to abide by NAR, National Association of Realtors Code of Ethics. And of course, we're licensed by the state of Florida. Property of the Villages employs agents who are licensed by the state of Florida, but they do not have to abide by the NAR Code of Ethics. So that is the difference. And there are two different marketplaces, by the way. And recently the Villages put out this particular, they found this in the mail, right? They talked about, and what I noticed is that what it was is a real estate market update, Spanish Springs, Brownwood, and Lake Sumter landing areas. And what I noticed is, very similar numbers over the last 2 to 3 years. MLS and POV, Property of the Villages, has been pretty almost neck and neck, mirror images of each other on the resale side. So just know what you're getting into when you're looking at buying. If you have comments, you have questions, I'm here for you. My name is Glenn Stein. If you didn't know that, broker, owner of Realty Executives in the Villages. We've been here since 2004, and we're the #1 company on the MLS side. So hope everybody has a great weekend. Hopefully this was helpful. If you have not subscribed, please subscribe, and you'll be notified whenever I do a video. Okay? All right. Take care, everybody.